Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about Canada and India and some moves that may or may not have been made on the foreign policy scene that have left a lot of people surprised. And maybe it shouldn't be surprising because it's something that we have talked about repeatedly on the channel. Okay, so what is the news? What's the story? Canada has suggested that it might be possible that Indian intelligence or elements associated with the Indian government were connected, maybe even responsible, for a hit on a Canadian citizen. A Canadian citizen who was supportive and working in furtherance of an independence movement inside India. Okay? That's the allegation, that's the story. This has, of course, upset India. India's mad about this. Canada's mad about this, understandably. Everybody's upset. They are basically bouncing diplomats from each other's country. You know, Canada is telling an Indian diplomat to go home, and India is telling a Canadian diplomat to go home, back and forth. And it's creating an international incident. We don't often hear about Canada being involved in an international incident, but here we are. One of the questions that kept coming in is Canada's allegation, is that realistic? Well, yeah. All countries do stuff like this. All countries. Especially those, like India, that are working their way to that big table. India is moving in the direction of becoming a world power. Their intelligence service is going to get active. And in the beginning, they're going to make a lot of mistakes. In this case, there are, quote, credible allegations that India was behind this. That probably requires some evidence, which violates the first rule of intelligence work. Don't get caught. The whole thing is, our failures are known, our successes are not. If people found out about it, it's a failure. The other thing to keep in mind is that while most people in the United States view India as a land of, pacifism, maybe, they associate it with nonviolence and yoga. The government there is pretty nationalist. And since they are moving towards becoming a major player on the world scene, they're going to behave that way. It shouldn't be surprising. Now, I would say that this is pretty bold. If these allegations are true, doing something like this in Canada, that's a reach. Especially if you're going to do it sloppily. But the big question seems to be doubting that India would do that. All countries would do that. All countries, particularly countries that are major players. Do not think that only the US, Russia, and China make moves like that. Countries all over the world engage in that type of behavior. And there are a few countries that have heavily curtailed their intelligence services. You can't do X, Y, and Z. But make no mistake about it, those intelligence officers, they want to do it. They just can't. And there aren't a lot of countries like that. Remember, an intelligence officer, their entire job is to break the law. They are a very well-trained criminal. That is their gig. Traveling under a fake identity, espionage, breaking and entering. This is all just Tuesday. An intelligence officer's job is to break the law. They go beyond what they're allowed to do. They go beyond what they were ordered to do. A lot. And they want to. So, what does this mean for foreign policy? Canada is not going to take this lightly. If the allegations are backed up by evidence, and since it was publicly stated, I kind of feel like it has to be, Canada isn't known for making allegations that they can't back up. They are not going to just be like, oh, apologize. There's going to be repercussions for this. India, they have no choice. They have to pretend like it wasn't them. And they will probably engage in a lot of responses to whatever Canada does. They're going to do something back to say it wasn't us and you're interfering with our internal affairs or something like that. And there will be counter allegations. This is normally something you see play out with opposition nations that are in direct opposition to each other. Canada and India, they really don't have that relationship historically. But the independence movement that is in India, they do get a lot of support from places like Canada and the United Kingdom. So India is going to try to use that as the diplomatic counterweight. But it doesn't really cancel out the move. So I wouldn't expect this to go away. This isn't something that is likely to spin into war or anything like that. It just creates frosty relations. And there are going to be a bunch of countries that have to reevaluate their relationship with India. Partially because it's becoming a world player. So it's going to do things that it never did before. And partially because the government there is very nationalistic. And a lot of countries that India has historically kind of been friends with, that's not a good thing. So the immediate fallout is going to be back and forth, maybe some trade stuff, things like that. Lots of talk. There's no war on the horizon over this. Canada may ask for extradition of somebody if they think they know who did it or something like that. But it's unlikely that that would happen. But we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. The key thing is, this is something to watch. Because India will be able to tell a lot about how India is going to respond in the future when they start making moves by what they do right now. The smart move would be a disavowal, be like, we can't believe they did that. We didn't tell them to do that, even if they were connected to us. They were way out of line for that. Bad intelligence officer. That would be the smart move. The newcomer move is going to be like, we didn't have anything to do with that, no matter what the evidence says. We're going to have to wait and see what India does, but it will give us some insight into how they will behave in the future until they kind of grow into the new role that they're finding themselves in. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.